All right, guys, we're back with another one. We're in Stamford, Texas, about to roll out up to Leuders, Texas, and it's spelled kind of weird. It's Leuders, so I don't even know if I'm saying it right. But we're headed up there to get a load of stone. While this is on my mind, the microphone and the setup that I use to record everything, it's called Boya. Don't buy it. It's garbage. I did this video twice yesterday, and it just pooped out on me in the middle of recording, and you don't even realize it till you look back on the video, and there's no reason for it. So Boya, B-O-Y-A, don't buy it. You get what you pay for. So I should have got something a little nicer, but I was being cheap. So anyway, today's video, we are going to be talking about my COVID experience, just because it's fresh on my mind, and I want to be able to recount this experience and look back on it in the future, rather than just kind of vaguely remembering it and losing some of the details over the years, as I tend to do. It's still fresh in my mind. It happened like 3 months ago, so we're going to go ahead and recount my experience. Hey, while I'm thinking of it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Most of the stuff I do is DIY truck repairs, but it's just kind of semi-truck related things. So every subscription counts and is appreciated. Also, share, like, comment, do all the things. So yeah, my COVID experience happened late July is when it first started. And then most of it was in early August. My wife was the one that got sick first, a couple days before me. I don't know if she gave it to me or what. Her experience was it wasn't nearly as bad as mine, but she had pretty bad strep throat. Yeah, I got it, and I had already had a load lined up to pick up in Oklahoma City, going down to Little Elm, Texas, which is just northeast of Dallas. And I don't like canceling loads, and I wasn't sick enough where I thought it was something that really I couldn't go out and run in. I felt okay to still drive. So I went ahead and picked up the load, ran down to Little Elm, delivered the load. By the time I delivered that load, I was already feeling quite a bit worse. I had already had another load lined up that was picking up west of Fort Worth in Stephenville, Texas, and it was for a guy that I do a lot of loads with, and I didn't want to cancel that, so I went ahead and headed over there. Pretty good deadhead. Normally my deadheads are only they're 100 miles or less, but this one was a long deadhead. It was 150 miles or something. But at the time, the spot market I think that was when it really started to get bad with the spot market. It was hard to find loads, so you gotta take what you can get right now. So I went ahead and headed over there, drove across Dallas, Fort Worth, west down 20, and then I forget the highway, you head south into Stephenville. I got there in the evening. I stayed at a Walmart, and when I got there, I was hungry. There was a Burger King that was across the parking lot, so I walked over there, and it was hot. It was 100 degrees. And I remember as I was walking over there, I really started to feel quite a bit worse. Just the heat was getting to me. I was sweating. I felt weak, and I was thinking, yeah, this is going to be a lot worse tomorrow. And I was debating on whether or not to cancel that load, but you don't want to cancel a load at 6 o'clock in the evening for a load that picks up at 8 o'clock in the morning the next day. It's going to be hard for that broker to find anybody else. I don't want to do that to him. So we just ate Burger King, and then I walked back to the truck, and I stayed in that truck for 14 hours. And I think it got down to maybe 70, 75 that night. I thought I could just turn the truck off and sleep, because that's normally what I do in weather like that. But that didn't happen. I had the truck off for maybe 30 minutes, and I was freezing. So I had to turn it back on, and I ended up having to turn the heater on full blast and wrap up in some blankets. And I was just under there trying to stay warm and sweating at the same time. That truck, I don't even know how hot it was, probably over 100 degrees inside. Yeah, we got up the next day, felt even worse. Went ahead and headed over there to the pickup to grab my load. The place I was picking up at, like many other places, still to this day, will not let you in if you are experiencing symptoms of COVID. So if you're coughing, sneezing, if you look a little tired, if your eyes are red, anything, you know, you're screwed. If you're a person like me that gets, you know, allergies every now and then, you got to do your best to cover that up, because they will straight up tell you you're not allowed. At this time, I suspected it might be COVID, but you know, I wasn't sure. I went ahead and went over to the place to pick up, checked in, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do was try to pretend to be well. Like, I was so sick, it was very hard to portray that image. And they probably knew. Looking back, they probably knew. But I was trying to keep my distance as best I could from those guys, as far away as I could, and I stayed away from them the entire time I was there. Everything was done outside. But that took forever to get that load strapped. My muscles were aching really bad. I just couldn't hardly move. Got it all strapped down. Headed straight home after that. 330 miles home. And that was one of the worst drives I've ever had to do. But I didn't know what else to do. I'm sitting there thinking, is there somebody I could call who could drive back? No. I don't know anybody in Stephenville. Can I call a wrecker to have them take my truck back? Nope. That's going to be like $10,000, and I'm not even joking about that. Can I leave the truck down here? No, it's going to get towed off. So, you know, had to drive home, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle to make it back home. If I was to get pulled over for a random inspection, which happens, I would have been screwed. They would have shut me down for sure. Because if you look sick and you get pulled over, they're going to shut you down. Nonetheless, we made it back home, and the load had to deliver the next day. So I get back home, go straight to sleep, wake up the next day. The place it was delivering to was only like 20 miles from home. And when I got there, they always ask you, if you're bringing in a load, they ask you where it's coming out of. And she asked me that, and my answer was, this is my answer. I told her, my truck number is 21 and my trailer is 1020. Doesn't make any sense, right? And she looked at me like I was crazy. And I was sitting there thinking, did she ask me that? You know, it's like, wait, she didn't ask me that. So that's whenever reality was really sinking in, as far as how much damage COVID is going to do. It's definitely like a bad omen at this point, you know, like it's going to get a lot worse. And it's going to be more than just being sick. Yeah, that happened. Ended up dropping off the load, head back home, immediately go to bed, and pretty much had committed myself at that point to just staying at home for at least a week, maybe 2 weeks, whatever it took to get better, you know, because at this point, it was hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so I go to bed. It was like, as soon as I got home, for the next 5 days probably, all I did was sleep. If I was awake, it was to eat or take a shower, and the rest of the time, I just laid back there in that bed. Yeah, I just slept a lot. I slept way more than I should. I would like get up at 6 o'clock and I would go back to sleep. And then I would wake up at 9 or 10 o'clock and I'd go back to sleep. And then I'd wake up at like 12 o'clock and I'd go back to sleep. And then I would wake up at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon And my wife was like starting to worry about me because this was becoming like a regular occurrence first few days. But I just had no energy. I think after maybe probably the third day, I started to lose my grip, my bearing on things, because I was sleeping so much that I just didn't know what was real and what was a dream. Well, I just took a wrong turn, guys, so we're still gonna get there, but it's gonna be a different way. But yeah, I really started to just kind of, when I woke up, it was like, am I really up or am I still asleep? Everything was just kind of all mixed together at that point. And it was like I wasn't sleeping or I wasn't awake. There was just this weird fog I was in. Everything was hazy. I had a really bad strep throat. God, that hurt. I was coughing all the time, which it just inflamed the strep throat. I guess we got to turn right here. And oh man, that came up quicker than I thought. Get to go down this dirt road. And yeah, I had all the typical flu-like symptoms. Headache, my nose was running. I had no appetite. I think that combined with getting too much sleep would have really kick-started all the mental stuff, because literally almost the entire time I had COVID, like all that I would eat in a day would be maybe like a half of a can of soup, the equivalent of that. You know, like 200 calories a day, maybe, and water, if I could drink it. It was just hard to hold anything down. My body was malnutrition. I was oversleeping. It was like my body shut down, which it actually did shut down a few of its functions. My fingernails stopped growing, and I know this because I now have dents on them. I guess your body during COVID has to devote all of its energy to fighting it. So things that aren't necessary stop working, like your fingernail growth. My hair, about half of my hair stopped growing, and it still won't grow. And apparently it takes about 6 months for it to start growing again. But I have read about 10% of people, it just doesn't grow at all. So we'll see. As far as the flu-like stuff, that lasted for probably 5 days. The strep throat kind of went away after that. It's hard to remember the exact timeline of everything, but I believe it was probably the third day. My parents came up to drop off their dog, and we told them we were sick to just drop them off and roll out, but they stayed for a little bit to talk. I just knew at that time that I wasn't there, like mentally. I didn't feel like it at all whenever I was talking with my dad. And I asked him about that later on after I got better, and he was like, yeah, you were definitely not all there. Something was off. You know, more than just being sick. I think that was really the beginning of starting to kind of lose my mind a little bit. I had like a pressure on my head. And the best way to describe it is if you hold an egg and you try to squeeze it, that's what it felt like on my head. Not really a headache, just pressure. It got worse and worse, and it got to the point to where I could feel like my heart, my pulse, my heart rate, I could feel it in my head. Hard to describe, and I could almost hear it. I could almost hear my heart going, and there was like a weird tone that I was hearing, kind of like a it's hard to describe. A humming. I was hearing like a humming, and I didn't know that COVID had any mental, side effects. I thought it was all just like flu-like symptoms, like a really bad flu. And you really have to do some digging to find out that a lot of people do experience a lot of mental anguish, but I don't exactly know how common it is. And it could be like a new occurrence. I'm not sure. It's just, there's just not a lot of information on it. Yeah, 4 or 5 days in, strep throat subsided a little bit, but then the mental stuff really kicked in. It was like I couldn't function. It was like I had a stroke. That's probably the best way to describe it. It was like I had a stroke. I couldn't walk straight. I couldn't put together sentences. I was slurring my speech. My body couldn't regulate itself. I would break out in sweats just at random moments. I would get cold at random moments. I would get hot at random times. Everything was off. My body was just going haywire, pretty much. I mean, I went on a walk with Rebecca one time, and I could hardly even walk straight. I couldn't put together a sentence very well. She had to like guide me almost as we walked around the neighborhood, and I was like, oddly, it was a weird sweat that I broke out in. We went to a truck stop too one time because our plumbing was messed up, and so we had to take a shower at the truck stop. And my TA card wasn't, the fuel, it didn't have any shower points on it for some reason. And I got like really frustrated at that. And it normally wouldn't bother me, but it was just frustrating. And I went ahead and paid for it and went back to the shower. And when I left the truck stop, it's kind of like a maze in the back of the truck stop where the showers are. So if you're leaving the truck stop, you got to turn right down this hallway, and then you walk down the hallway, you turn right again, and then it jogs back left, and you go up to the front. Pretty easy for anybody to navigate, but I could hardly navigate it, and I ended up walking into the women's bathroom thinking that was how you get out of the truck stop. And an employee was in there. She had to like escort me out, so that was embarrassing. And I was like, golly, I can't even figure out how to get out of this truck stop. I was completely aware of how far gone I was at that point. I wasn't oblivious to anything, and that was so frustrating to just know that I'm this messed up. And it was scary because, I mean, I honestly thought I had a stroke for a little bit because I just didn't know that was COVID related stuff. And a lot of people I've talked to since then have been like, are you sure you had COVID? And I did. I am sure I had COVID. Just a weird side effect. I'm sitting there thinking, I could be stuck this way forever. I could not function in society like that. I was too embarrassed to even go and talk to anybody because I knew instantly they would be like, did he have a stroke? I was worried at that point, like, what's Rebecca going to do if I'm stuck like this? Because it's like, how do you snap out of it? As far as the stuff that's going on physically, that's stuff that I'm accustomed to. And we all know, you know, if you get a cough, a bad cough, if you get strep throat, it's not permanent. You're stuck with it for a few days and then your body heals itself. But as far as mental things, you don't know. It's like, I might be stuck like this. And that was like a really terrifying thought.